So today is the 26th of March, and since I talked to you, there is a dramatic change in India. As you know, on 24th, I think, evening, Indian Prime Minister addressed the public, and he, said from midnight on 24th, the India going to, they're going to set curfew for all over India for 21 days. So we are today, in that case, today is the second day of that curfew, and the place is very, very quiet. Sera is very, very quiet because there's no tuk-tuk, there are no tuk-tuks, there are no, those other sort of transports, and also monks are, as I mentioned in my previous talk, monks are, more like in self-quarantine, staying. And so today, around 1:30 in the afternoon, I look at it from my two windows, which I can see the two different streets. I spend almost 2 minutes from each window to just really look, are there any human beings are moving, but not at all from both windows when I look at that. So it's very much quiet. The place is very, very quiet. But this morning, me and the Sera Abbot, we went to see the gate where we are stopping, outside, coming in, and also, the monks going out. So we spent there about 10, 15 minutes and talked to the monks who are in charge of that with the two disciplinary teachers, Geguin we call. And during that period, there were about 20, the people, some are female, some are male, dressed like a nurse. And with mainly, they all are in a motorbike, and they all say we are from the local what you call the the hospital, and instructed by the some of the district the office to check those monks who came from Nepal or outside India. So I heard that they have a system. Mainly the monks or the people who enter India through airline, and when they arrive at the airline, they have a system of you have to explain everything, where you're going to go, where you're going to live, what is your contact number, everything, and have a quite detailed form to be filled. And so one of the monks who came from Nepal on 13th or 14th of March, and he came from Nepal, flying to Bangalore. He said, since he arrived in Sera, initially, first 2 weeks are more, the computer automatic sort of saying, are you okay? If you're okay, click this number. If you have a fever, click this number. But then when it reached to the third, at the end of the quarantine, then the actual people called him from Mysore. So saying, how you're doing, are you all right? So there is a system. There is a system, very, very impressive. This is what I learned today. So then when these nurses, I was very curious, I want to know where they are going to go, and Then I asked the monk who's helping me, and I said, I want to follow them where they were going. And they have all the individual monks who came from Bangalore airport or other airport. They were checking, personally coming to check where they are separated and how they were doing. And that was very, very impressive. And I asked one of the Indian guys, and they're saying, he had a long chart, and in that chart, list of name and telephone number, and they're going to go to visit those people. And that's very impressive, I found. Although I think that now today, and this just a few 2 hours ago, I got quite bad news. That is in Mysore, which is 2 hours from here. The man is diagnosed as a positive, but he has no history of travel abroad. So they said it's very bad news. It might be now community sort of, somehow it is. So anyway, that is the situation here. So, but I'm still well. And so from tomorrow in Sera, we are going to do a medicine Buddha puja. Not all the monks, just 4 monks. Tomorrow I'm going to join, and we will sit 1.5 meter apart. But every day we are going to do full length of medicine Buddha prayer, and that is really what is happening in the world. And people who want to request that prayer, they can do that through Sera website or Sera Facebook, and that's what we have set up, because I felt, yes, it is important to have all this medical instruction and medical help and all those rules and regulations, but it is also important to have some kind of spiritual, spiritual elements in the process of dealing with this situation. And because, of course, individually, the monks, I'm sure they are doing prayers and, all those things, but I thought it may need some focus area, but we don't want to bring more than 4 months. But tomorrow going to be 5, because I'm going to join tomorrow morning. And so this is one new thing that we have I've set up. It is just in Sera. I'm sure other monastery may doing some other things, but I set up this. And so that is the spiritual element from the organization as a Sera monastery. And that's how it is really relation to the illness and my situation. And yes, of course, being the abbot, constantly meeting. So today, this afternoon, I had a meeting with the monks who are working at the health center, and some are very good, some are not very good, and they have a little bit argument, a little bit, things. That is how it is. So, and but the monks are the monks who are in the Sera social service, which is our health. Very, very. What we have is, first of all, these monks are not really trained proper nurse. They're just there, and through their experience. Secondly, they've never done these things. They have never done this. They have never seen these things, let alone to doing it. Never seen like this. And they're very fearful, very, very fearful. When I said, now when a monk got ill from Sera, you are the people, the first going to handle. No other monks going to handle this. And their face gone blank. And they asked, oh, we are very worried. Yes, I said, we will give you, the protection as much as we get it. And we will not ask you guys to handle the illness without any protection. But there's no guarantee, no matter how good protection they have. I can't give you 100% guarantee because look at, these developed country have all those technology, all those, their nurses and doctors get, catch the virus, also some passed away. But now this is the time you can't back down because saying I'm fearful. So that was a little bit strong word. I have to say it, otherwise it was not going to work. And so we'll see. We will see. So I want to say a little bit on this, how we should, prepare or face this very, what you call the drastic situation. Today I read an article on the BBC that is in the future section. I can't remember the writer, wrote a very powerful, what you call the articles about, the past, present, also future. How due to these viruses, different viruses in the past, like in, for example, 20th century, he talked about the chicken pox, like how many people are killed, and so forth. He said, if you combine all the world, war together, and how many people lost life, there's no comparison how many people have lost life with these different viruses. The number is much, much higher. People lost life with the viruses. And in fact, the 2017 and 2018, several researchers warn there is a great risk these kind of virus may occur, and we are not that much ready to do that. And the word he used, this is what I want to talk, vulnerable. We are very vulnerable. And this is which I find is very important word, although his main, his main I think what he's trying to tell us is we don't pay that much attention. How weak we are, how vulnerable we are with these viruses or these new viruses. That was his main the point that he was making, and he said, last 20, 30 years, these kind of viruses are coming more and more compared to the previous century. Previous century, there were some big ones like chickenpox or some other Spanish flu, but they also at that time don't have those antibiotics and so forth. But compared now, it's less of new viruses now, last 20 years or something like that, more and more. So here is again another point of what he said is, we have in many countries we have lots of what's called the memorial, like statues, or in the UK cenotaph that in front of the 10 Downing Street, because we lost so many people in the war. Is of course a man-made problem, but he said, we don't have any sort of reminding us saying how many how many lives are lost by the different these kind of viruses, and so the point of what I'll make is this, how vulnerable this life individually, collectively, and this is what it is you know, which I mentioned my previous talk, the nature of impermanence. What the Buddha, you know, constantly remind us. So, for example, this verse saying our life is like a, you know, like a bubble, like a dew, like a, you know, the rubbery, like that, very fragile, very vulnerable. And you know, Buddha constantly said we should remind ourselves that's the case, that's the situation. And by reminding that our life is very vulnerable, very easy to be lost, you know, as I mentioned in my previous talk, in this tiny virus, you know, now more than close to 20,000 people, you know, lost their life. And why it is so important for us to remember and you know, and remind ourselves, live with that kind of thought, is if we live with that kind of notion that this life, this you know, the body that we have is very vulnerable, you know, then very fragile, easy to be lost, easy to be destroyed, then that way we may not spend our time and energy, you know, some of those unessential, you know, activities or the projects. You know, the other ways we constantly think, okay, you know, tomorrow, next year, you know, next decade, I may need this. As you know, when I was in Jamyang, I constantly use this one of my example. You know, when I open the drawers and I see so many different clothes and, you know, trousers and hats and constantly, oh, I may need this next week or next summer, and that's the I feel clear sign of, you know, I haven't sort of really got the message of nature of impermanence, you know, which Buddha taught. And that is really something. When we think about nature of impermanence and vulnerability of our lives, initially there might be some kind of fear, and that's nature. That's you know, nature. But it then, through that listening, reading, you know, those great teachers, you know, teachings given by those great teachers, then channel our energy and resources towards more meaningful, more, you know, what you call the useful and helpful things. We may not spend lots of our time and resources something just, you know, the unessential, unimportant events. We will feel the purpose of life. You know, very often people who, you know, face sort of imminent death, some illnesses or certain, when they come back, when they recover from that, when I listen to those, almost 100% those people say, due to that, I've changed my life. I've changed my way of living. What does that mean? Is they see the purpose of life. They see the meaning of life. They feel how sort of, you know, grateful I'm still alive. And that is really something in this kind of time, if we, you know, if we think like that. It may not cure the people who have the illness. It may not cure it. It won't cure the, you know, our fear immediately, but it will give us, okay, this is the nature of the reality. And before I stop, I want to say one thing. This, you know, I can't remember when, maybe more than 10 or 20 years ago, one time I read an article, and the article talking about, you know, miracle, quite a miracle. And many of you have heard this while I was in Jamyang. And this scientist is a scientist. And he said, if there's a miracle, then in this body, there are millions of cells functioning. And they're functioning, most of the time very sort of nicely, not multiplying more than they need or less than they need. They really multiply according to their need and status. But there's millions of cells are there functioning, working there. And occasionally, very occasionally, they act wrongly or they go wrong. And not going wrong constantly is miracle. That's what he said. And that is really very much in my head. And I thought, wow, that is really good teaching. And scientifically, and it is, then they see now we have the powerful technology to see what's happening, how many cells are there, how they act, how they multiply. For example, I was told, I read an article a few days ago. Now, one of the reasons why the people are in a very poorly situation when they face this virus, because our body overreact to fight the virus. And our body overreact to fight the virus, therefore body is completely exhausted. And these are really some sort of, I found this really a miracle to do that, have that sort of thing. So, what I'm bringing is two things. On one hand, what the article that I read in the BBC in the future, saying how vulnerable this body. But on the other hand, I don't want to cause fear, what's called, I don't want to cause lots of fear, but this other scientist said, it is miracle, most of the time, all the, these cells are functioning properly. In other ways, we will die constantly because when it goes wrong, and so, but that is not the case. But whatever the case, the situation here is to remind ourselves nature of impermanence. And that is the fact, that is the reality, and to remind ourselves that, and then channel the whatever positive things, what we can do right here and now to ourselves, to our friends, to our loved ones, to our neighbors, wherever we can. As I mentioned in my previous talk, first protect ourselves, then talk to help to the others. This I think I mentioned this in the past because I talk a lot. My 20-something years talk blah blah. So I was asked by one somewhere in the class, not in Jamia, some in other. So talking about the bodhisattva's action and motivation. And the question was, which is very common, question was, in the airline, when they mention all the the safety procedure, and they say, okay, first put mask on yourself, then help children or the others. And is it bodhisattva deeds, or first we have to help others, then? So initially I thought, how stupid question. But there is a good, reason why the person asked that question. There's a good reason, and so like that, of course, in this kind of situation, as I mentioned in the previous, support, protect yourself, but then if you have the time and energy, particularly those young ones, to really go to the community, help as much as you can, and that is what I want to say today. So you're going to hear this, help others again and again during this time. And after 3, 4, 5 times, you may fed up saying, "Oh, he will say that." Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you very much, and talk to you again. Yeah. Thank you.